kind of jump into, a little bit about alcohol ink. It is a dye and not a pigment. So when you do use alcohol ink, you have to be sure to protect it really well if you want to preserve your painting. Even when I'm making cards, I will make sure that I spray with a sealant so that I protect it from fading, because the inks are going to tend to fade a little bit more than watercolor even, or especially acrylics. And I use this, it's the Krylon UV archival spray. Whatever you use, there are lots of things you can use out there, but you just want to make sure that whatever you're using does not contain alcohol, because if you use just some of the other sealants, it can start to move the ink, so you would really destroy what you've already created. So you just want to make sure that this is what I have found works best. There's also a Krylon Kamar that people use to set the ink, and then they'll seal it with a UV spray. But lots of UV sprays have an alcohol, sort of substance in there, so it will react with the ink. So this is a good one to use, and I can post this somewhere if anybody needs that information. And you can also, there are lots of Facebook communities for alcohol ink, and everyone, will post that kind of information that you need as far as, sealing your artwork. So there are lots of different brands of alcohol ink out there now. I think in the early days, there were just a couple of manufacturers, and Ranger, Tim Holtz has been one of the big players in this market. And those are some of my favorite inks are by Ranger. So I use these a lot, but there are lots of different ones out there now. And then you also, in order to get the ink to move on your surface, I use 91% alcohol. It's just rubbing alcohol. And Kimberly, I'll put it in these little, yes.
May I interrupt just 1 minute? I'm so sorry. There are two screens. Okay. There are two screens for Kimberly, everybody. One just has her beautiful picture, and the other one actually has her live. So if you go to the other screen, she's got a little cap on, and she's got beautiful work behind her. And all you have to do is put that on speaker view, and you'll see her, because there's two screens. Okay. Thanks, Kimberly. Okay. Excuse me.
That's okay, because I am talking through my phone, which is the one that just has the picture. So thank you for pointing that out.
Where do we find the speaker thing to make her picture bigger?
Go up to the top of your screen, and you should see something that says gallery view or speaker view. And okay. when you find Kimberly, she's got 3 dots. No offense, Kimberly, and it says pin. Okay. So pin her video, and you'll get it, just like all the other speakers we've done.
Thank you.
The problem might be that I'm actually muted, the one where I have the hat on. And so I don't know if the speaker view is going to show that one. I mean, I think I could switch it around if I need to.
I think it's that you had two different views, and people were only seeing the one with your picture. And now, is everybody on with her?
No.
No, I can't find speaker view on my phone.
One with her picture only.
Okay, do you see, I'm sorry, Kimberly, do you see,
okay.
There's 2 screens that have Kimberly, and one just has her picture, and one has her live.
Yes.
I don't see the live one, I only see the picture, and I don't have any way on my phone to get any kind of speaker view. I can't see.
Kimberly, if you switch the audio to the other source, then it will pull up your live photo.
Let me try that.
Just click on her picture.
Worked for me.
I think sometimes it's hard what we're on.
Sideways and find her.
I like the dog barking.
Oh, sorry. I just don't know how.
Can you, if you're still having trouble and you can't put it on speaker view, can you find?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you. I'm getting a bit of an echo, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, what about now?
I got it.
Perfect.
Everybody got her now? Thanks, Kimberly.
I'm getting a little bit of an echo now when I switch.
Well, you have to turn off the second audio.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yeah, you just
I
have to
think
make sure
so.
you only have one audio on.
I'm not seeing any more comments in the chat, so I think we might be good.
Yeah, I'm still getting an echo. I'm sorry.
I don't hear an echo.
I'm hearing it on my end.
I don't hear it on you from your audience.
No, I don't either,
Okay.
Kimberly.
We're fine.
Okay, I'm going to try to ignore it then. Okay, so that's going to be very distracting for me. I'm hearing myself talk over here, and I don't know how to turn that off.
I wonder if you could turn down the volume on that one. If you
I have
keep
it all the way down. Okay, how about now? Okay, I think we have
That's
it.
perfect.
Yay, okay. All right, so as far as what to paint on with alcohol ink, non-pouring surfaces are the best because it really allows the inks to flow and they kind of intermingle with each other and they react with each other and they react with alcohol when you add alcohol to them. But you can also paint on canvas, you can paint on pretty much anything as long as you prep the surface and make sure that it's a little bit non-porous when you begin to work on it. If you can see behind me, this is canvas and this is alcohol ink here, if you can see that. And then over here, the round piece is actually metal. So you can paint on metal really nicely with alcohol ink. Let me grab that. So this is actually a pizza separator. And that's done with alcohol ink there. And the ink moves really, really well on that. You can paint on glass, and I've done lots of glass bottles, like wine bottles. And tile, ceramic tile is a great way to start with alcohol ink because you can actually wipe this completely off with alcohol if you make a mistake and start all over. And this is actually just a 6-inch tile that I painted. I'm going to put resin on top of this, and it's going to be mounted on this box that opens up like a little treasure box like that. So all kinds of things you can do with this medium. And I thought I would just do a couple little quick demos. So what I'm going to try to do now is bring this camera on and get my workspace on, except that I think you might have to switch views, or I might have to change my audio back again. All right, let me see what it's looking like. I want to make sure that I can get the whole thing in there. Here we go. So should I switch my audio back so that this is the speaker view again? Would that help?
I think what probably is going to whatever works for you.
Okay, all right. Well, as long as you can see what I'm doing, can everybody see my my workspace? You can't, Gail? So I'm going to have to change it back then, if that's okay.
If you guys can't see her workspace, remember she's got 2 cameras working, so you may have to go to the other camera. So what you should be seeing, what she's got now, is what looks like a table cover and some bottles of ink in her hands. If you can't see that, you need to toggle to the other view of her.
Okay, can you see me now?
Can everybody see her workspace? That's what we should be looking at. Okay. And her hand.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see your workspace.
Okay. All right.
I'm still not seeing the workspace. I'm just seeing.
There's two views for Kimberly. You need to go to the other view of her. Go across your screen to wherever you've got your little blocks of people, and look for the other view of her.
I am not able to click on that view and get her.
See, I don't know what you guys are using, if you're using phones or.
Okay, I got it. Finally.
It should
Kimberly?
actually be speaker view now.
Kimberly?
Yeah, you're on speaker view.
Okay, has everybody got her?
Don't wait for me. I'll just try to figure it
Okay.
out.
Are you able to choose the screen and share it?
Carolyn, you're muted.
I was just trying to do that. But it's kind of funny. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can actually get her to share. That's why you saw that thing. Well, yeah, she's right.
Well, see,
here.
I've got a split screen and I'm seeing your small thing on one side and Kimberly on the other side. I think we probably got to go with what we've got so she can go on. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it should be, and actually I should be speaking through this particular frame right now. So if you're on speaker view, then hopefully it'll show up.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the really nice papers to use for alcohol ink is Yupo paper, and this is a non-porous paper. It's almost plastic-like, so it doesn't rip or tear, and the ink kind of sits on top of it and glides, which is the way we want the inks to work. And the other thing is, the way that I paint with alcohol ink is that I use air to move the ink. So I'm either going to be using canned air, and I use this Dust Off brand, and this gets a little bit expensive after a while. So a lot of people who do this a lot will use an airbrush. So I also have an airbrush, and I'll show you how that works today. And the little unit that I have was probably around $80 or $90 a few years ago when I got it on Amazon. So actually pays for itself after a while if you do a lot of this type of work. You can also use one of these little bulbs like this to move the ink. It's a little bit harder on your hands. It takes a little more effort, and it doesn't have as much air pressure, so you get more of an abstract look when you use this type of tool to move the ink. So it's good in some cases, but I don't use this a whole lot. And this is just a camera lens cleaner. You can get these on Amazon fairly inexpensively. And Ranger Inks also makes one of those. They kind of caught on to that, and now they're marketing that as an alcohol ink blower. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to take some of my 91% alcohol and just sprinkle some of that on my paper. And this Yupo paper, you can use either side of it. It's the same, so there's no right or wrong side to this. And I'm just going to start with this yellow. This is called Honeycomb. I'm just going to put a little squirt of that down and just use my canned air just to give that a little movement. This canned air can be a little bit tricky. Takes a little bit of getting used to. You definitely don't want to shake it up, and you don't want to lean it over completely horizontal. You want to keep it as upright as possible, and it will get really, really cold and start to freeze up if you shake it or you move it around too much. And that's why I have a tendency to want to rotate my paper instead of moving my arm around when I'm blowing the ink. It kind of helps it to not freeze up as quickly. So I'm putting some ink down, some more alcohol, and just giving it little short bursts of air just to kind of spread that ink around. And I think I'll add a little bit of blue on top of this. And the cool thing about alcohol ink is that these colors are transparent, so you can layer the inks. However, these do interact with each other. So when you put these inks down on top of each other, the ink is going to react with what's underneath it. So you might have something that you like underneath. Let's say you have a petal or something underneath there that you like, when you put more ink on top of it, it's just going to keep moving that ink underneath. And so this looks kind of odd now, but I could add some more alcohol to it without even any ink, and I could just keep moving. I could just keep moving that ink around it. You just keep adding alcohol, and it continues to move the ink. So right now I'm just putting a little bit of color in the background. I'm just kind of go around with that. You can lay the inks on top of each other, and they'll mix just like any other medium would. You know, your yellow and your blue is going to get greenish. So I'm just now just getting a little bit of some color in the background. Any questions about this so far? I know we just got started, but anybody got any questions about it? I mean, has anybody worked with alcohol ink before? I know Gail has. I see Gail from my class, and anybody else has tried this before? That
I was watching some other demos on alcohol ink, and they were saying that they prefer to use a blending instead of alcohol. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll show you. I'll show you what they're talking about. Here's the solution, and this is made by the same company as the that makes the inks. This is Ranger, Tim Holtz. The thing about this is it contains like glycerin and something that's kind of sticky. So I tend to not use this as much. The difference is that this will hold your color a little bit more. The alcohol tends to lift some of that color away. So if you want to keep the color really, really deep and vibrant, sometimes using the blending solution will help. It kind of helps the alcohol ink to stick, you know, to your substrate. But what happens is that in the end, it ends up being a little bit sticky. And especially if you're in an area that's humid, like we are here in North Carolina, it kind of even bubbles up on your surface. So I end up using alcohol more than I use that. And alcohol is a lot less expensive too. It gets a little bit pricey for the blending solution. So now I've just got a bunch of,
Somebody also asked about using a hair dryer instead of the air.
Yeah, you can use a hair dryer. I don't use a hair dryer a whole lot for my flowers. I use it for abstracts because it doesn't have like a ton of force behind it. The canned air is going to give you the most force. I mean, that's going to really give you more control of the ink. The airbrush would be the next thing that, you know, gives you, you know, you can kind of adjust the force of the air with the airbrush. And the hair dryer is good for, you know, making abstract looking art pieces. You can do some really cool things as far as getting like little wavy lines in there with hair dryer. It just does a different thing than the canned air does. But yeah, you can definitely use that. So I've just got something now. I'm going to take some pitch black and I'm going to drop that right in the middle. And this is where I'm going to start to try to kind of define some petals. And I'm going to let this pitch black dry a little bit before I start blowing it out. I like to add something dark to the center of the flower because it, you know, gives it more depth in there. So I'm just going to, these are called micro makeup tools or micro dental tools. You can get these on Amazon. You can get about 400 of these for about $10. They're really cheap and they're disposable. But you know, you can sometimes if I get a, you know, a certain color on one, I'll use it over and over until the little tip of it wears off. So I want to let that dry a little bit before I start blowing it. And I'm just going to use my airbrush just to give it a little bit of air and kind of dry. You'll be able to tell that it's dry because the color gets a little dull. It has a really shiny surface until it dries, and then you'll see that it gets a little dull. You may not be able to see it on the camera, but you'll see it in person. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. So once that's dry, I'm going to take my alcohol and my air again, and I'm going to put a little bit of alcohol along that edge. And this is where I'm going to start to try to define some petals. So I'm going to take the little edge of the straw there and just work it around and shape the ink as I blow it out. So I'm just kind of going around the edges and then back in the center. And so I'm getting some just little subtle lines there. So I'm going right along the edge of that black and just, and now sometimes that happens, you get kind of residue that blows out of the canned air. So this is real-time painting, so these things are gonna happen. And some of these, for some reason, some of these cans are worse than others when it comes to blowing out that liquid. I'm just switching it around. So I'm going around the edges and just kind of shaping the petal. So what it's doing is just using that ink that I put down in the background form. I'm just moving it around, using that black to blow out into the other colors and trying to shape some petals. And then also where you see the black blowing out into the petals, that, you know, helps create that dimension in the center. And so, you know, right in here where I got that liquid that blew out, I could go right over top of that again with the canned air. I could add more alcohol to that and just blow right on top of that again and try and smooth that out some. Ink is going to keep moving. If you add alcohol to it, it's just going to keep moving until you seal it with that spray that I told you about. It's just going to keep moving. I could put this away and I could go back to it a year from now and add alcohol to it, and I could change the entire thing. So it's not ever going to be finished until you seal it. So can you see, hopefully you can see where I got some petals in there. Any questions about that? And now if you wanted something more dramatic, you can add another color on top. I could use this, this is called Fiesta. I could put some of that pink down and some alcohol and blow more of a brighter color on top. And because these are transparent, they're not gonna completely cover up what you have underneath. So where you can see some of that color will show through there, which I think is kind of pretty. Any questions about that? You see how that's looking? I wish somebody was painting along with me. That would be fun.
I just have a question on, so you wait till after you seal it, do you then clean up the back of the Yupo paper? Or do you not worry about that? Or I was just kind of wondering because it's not showing through all that ink, you know, that must be on the back. Oh, it's not a lot. Huh?
No, it just comes around the edges because you know, I'm using a little puppy pad underneath my painting. It kind of absorbs, you know, soaks the ink up. But some of that will get on the back.
That
You
was
could
my
take some-
next question.
Yeah,
The
you could
puppy
take
pad.
you could take some alcohol and just wipe that off if you wanted to, but I normally don't worry about the back very much.
Kimberly, what did you say the name of the sealer was again? It's the Krylon, right?
It's Krylon UV Archival.
Kimberly, what are some other things besides flowers that you find are easy to form with the alcohol?
You can do some beautiful landscapes with alcohol ink. And when I first discovered alcohol ink, I actually believe I was probably on YouTube. I mean, that's where everything is, right? YouTube has everything. So, and I ran across an artist, Alexa Bonavita Cola. I don't know if any of you have heard about her, and she has quite a following as far as alcohol ink goes. And she was the first person that I ever took any classes from. And she does beautiful landscapes with alcohol ink. And that's kind of, she just inspired me really to kind of pick it up and go with it. And so I took a class from her, and that's when I kind of developed my own style of painting flowers, and I started creating some, I like the abstract kind of, well, more impressionistic look of the petals, but then I wanted to add something more realistic to the center, and I started creating a center there. And I was in Alexis's class when I started doing this, and she's the one who actually encouraged me to start teaching it, because at the time, you didn't see very much of that. Now you see lots of people doing the flowers with the more realistic centers, but at the time you didn't really see it that much. But if you look up Alexis Bonavita Cola, she has some gorgeous landscapes, and I've done some too, but hers are just, I don't know, there's just something about them. They're just amazing. Beautiful, beautiful work.
Can you repeat her last name?
It's Bonavita Cola. It's Bonavita Bonavita Cola.
Okay, thank you.
Now, some people paint with alcohol ink just like they would with, you could, you know, use them in a dry palette. You could put your alcohol ink in a palette, and then you could just let the alcohol evaporate. And then you could take a paintbrush and just put some alcohol on it and dip it in like a watercolor dry palette. And you could paint very realistic paintings. And there are some artists who do like some amazing work with that type of technique. I don't do a lot of that. I use a lot of air to move my ink, but you can use those just like you would like a watercolor. All right, I'm going to blow a little bit more here, and then I'll show you what I do to the center. This one ended up getting a little bit messy, but that's okay. I think with alcohol ink, you're never going to get two paintings the same, and that's one of the things I like about it. Is, you know, I've had people ask me, you know, can you create something like this and this other color palette? And it's just impossible to do. You just can't ever recreate something. And sometimes I wish I could, and then other times I'm glad that I'm not going to recreate something because it doesn't really turn out the way I want it. But that's just I think the beauty of it is that you're not going to get two exactly the same. This one, I think I'm going to have to stop here in a second, just give up on this little area that I can't quite get right, but and I'll show you what I do to the center. So this is called a mixative. It's called snow cap, and this is the white. So this has a pigment in it, and it's more opaque. These alcohol inks are transparent, but this mixative, the white, is a little more opaque. So if you add this to your inks, you can get a little more opaqueness, if that's a word, to the inks. But I also use this in the center of my flowers to create some depth. So I'm just going to put some in my palette. And I hope I'm still in the frame there. And then I'm going to use one of these little micro makeup tools. And try to kind of figure out where I want my light coming from. I think I'll just kind of consider my light source coming from this direction. And so I'm going to make it brighter over on this area, on this side. And I'm just applying little dots. And I'm going to do a kind of this probably quicker than I normally do, just because of, you know, we have a little bit of a time limit on this. But sometimes I spend a lot of time on these centers, getting them, you know, so that they have really a lot of depth, a lot of dimension. So what I'm trying to do is create a brighter area on this side, and then I'm going to have it be darker as it comes down. So I'm making my little dots a little further from each other as I come down, and maybe a little bit smaller. So as the white wears off the little tool, I'll come down in this area and have it heavier up here. So that's the what I'm hoping for, is that it looks almost 3D when I'm finished with it. But this takes a little bit of time. It takes a lot of layers because that white really seems to soak into the background and almost disappear. So you have to add lots of layers, and until you get really the look you're going for. So I don't know if you can start to see it a little bit. Maybe I'll hold it up at a different angle. I think there's a little bit of a glare. So hopefully you can see what's starting to happen there. Can you see that? And then another thing that some people like to do is add a little splatter of alcohol to their painting. You can take a brush. I just have some old brushes that I use for this. You can put a little bit of alcohol on there and just tap it. I tap it off first, and then you can tap it on your painting, and you can just add like little sprinkles of just little drops. Kind of gives it that look. Can you see that okay?
It's beautiful.
That's just
really
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Well,
gorgeous.
I'll have to work on this one a little bit more. It didn't go quite as planned, but that's the basic concept, is just, you know, having that darker color in the center, and then, you know, adding some of that white on top to kind of get that depth there. But a lot of times it's better to let this really dry well. Sometimes you can put a hair dryer on it to get it super dry, and then put your white down. It'll stand out a little bit more. But anyway, that's the basic concept to doing that. Any questions about that before I move on? I had one.
Kimberly, somebody has asked if wood is too porous to use.
Probably so, unless you treat it with something first. You could probably treat it. I don't know. For canvas, a lot of people use Kills too, a coat of that on canvas to make it non-porous and a little bit slicker. I use my canvas straight out of the store, and it does soak up a lot of the ink, but I use that. But if I don't know, if there was something you could add to the wood to make it less absorbent, then you could probably use it just fine. I don't know if I've seen anybody use ink on wood. I don't know. I was going to ask. I know Gail is one of my students. She's here in the group. I was going to, and Kay, they might know if they wanted to chime in, but I don't think I've seen that. So I was going to show you how this looks on black too, because alcohol ink looks really, really pretty on black. And this is called Nara black, and this is like a heavy black, non-porous, almost like plastic-like paper. So the paper that I just used was called Yupo, Y-U-P-O. This does not come in black, but more and more now there are companies making these non-porous surfaces for alcohol ink, and this is one of the newer papers. And again, this is not N-A-R-A, and this is their black version of their alcohol ink paper. And you could also use like a poster board. You could use any kind of plastic. You know, I've seen people use file folders, plastic file folders, and you can also use glossy cardstock, and that works. That has a little bit of, it's a little porous, but it works well with alcohol ink too. So the difference is when you're using a black background, is because these inks are transparent. If I were to put this ink down and blow it out, you wouldn't see it at all. It would just disappear into the background. So what you have to do is add some of this white to it to get it to show up on the black. So let me, I'm gonna grab another color just so you can see another color. This is called Ember. This is also by Ranger. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this Ember down. That's a little puddle, and some of the white right on top, and some of the alcohol. And just give that some air. And again, these inks look just really, really pretty on black. You can see they just have, it just adds just a nice, really beautiful glow. And I'll show you the airbrush too. I meant to do that before. The airbrush doesn't have as much force behind it, but it will move the ink really well. So you get a very similar look. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. And these make really pretty cards. This is probably I think about a 6x8 sheet, but a lot of times I'll do these on smaller pieces, and I make cards out of them, and they're really, really beautiful. And they don't take very long. These are very quick little easy paintings. It does take a little bit of time to get used to it, get used to how this air works, but once you get it, it really is a pretty way to paint. And so I'm just going back right now, just kind of layering some petals on top of petals. And I love that they're transparent, that you can just kind of see, you can see your other petals through there. Can you all see that okay?
That's just gorgeous on the black.
And I just stuck my hand in. See how I stuck my hand in that? So now I'm just going to blow one right on top of that. I just smeared it. So yeah, you can just keep moving that ink. It doesn't move as much on the black as it does on the white for some reason. Once it's down there, you can't, if I were to just put alcohol down on it and try to move the ink a whole lot, it kind of sticks more to the surface than the white. But you can get it, you know, to move to something, just not as much as on the white. There are just endless things you can do with it. I mean, you can, you know, layer other colors on top. Now these inks will get muddy just like anything else would. If I were to put, you know, red and green down, they could end up getting muddy. But as long as you're using colors that work well together, they're gonna look just fine. Give me, for some reason, it says my battery's running low, so let me just make sure I'm plugged in over there.
I can tell you guys that Kimberly makes this look a whole lot easier than it probably is for real, but it's a lot of fun to work with. I have spent endless amounts of time in the garage with my little blower brush and Larry's air compressor, all different sizes of air compressors working on it too. So it's a lot of fun to play with.
It is fun. It's a ton of fun. You can just get caught up in it. And I mean, I could just do this all day, every day. So am I still there? Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to use the smallest little tool that I have. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm bending the end of it over and just kind of like a little L shape. And pull the white instead of using dots. I'm just going to pull little lines through there. But I'm going to use the same concept. I'm still going to try to make it a little brighter around this top area and have it get a little darker as it comes down.
While you add those, could you address using metallics?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I have some sitting over there. I'll show you. So okay. Ranger has a group called Alloys, and these work really well. And Pinata they just call theirs, you know, these are just metallics. And so they have a rich gold, and there's, you know, silver and brass and what else? Copper, I think the rich gold is my favorite. And then those alloys are beautiful too. And they have several different ones, but I'll show you how those look. They're really, really pretty. Although the thing that you have to be careful with the metallics, because they will take over the painting. If you use too much, they can like completely take over. So you have to use those a little sparingly. But they are really beautiful, and they can add such a nice touch to the paintings. And a lot of times, because they're so strong, a lot of times I'll dilute those with alcohol. I'll put them in a separate bottle, and I'll add just a few drops of metallic to one of these bottles of alcohol, and then I'll blow my petals with those, and it just kind of adds a nice shimmer, but it doesn't take over the painting too much. So that's just a little center in that one. Hopefully you can see that okay. Any questions about that? And I'll show you a metallic real quick.
And Kimberly, those little, I've already forgotten I was going to look them up, the dental picks that you use. That's not what they call them. And I bought a bunch of them, whoever asked, on Amazon.
They're called micro dental tools or micro makeup tools. And you can get a variety pack. They come in different sizes. There's not a huge difference in the sizes, but they're color coded and the tip is a little different. And, you know, you just use if you're doing a very large painting, you'd want to use some of the bigger ones, but I use all of these. So I just get the variety pack, and I get about 400 of them for about $10. Okay, so this is called Gilded. This is one of the alloys. Let me see if it might be a little clogged up. These have a tendency to get clogged, so let me shake that up again. This happens when you're painting live. This always happens when your ink won't come out. Oh, okay. Here we go. There we go. All right, so let me put down a little bit of pink, and I'm going to put a drop of this alloy, and just, you can see how it will kind of separate. I hope you can see that on the screen. Are we able to see that separate there? And it's really pretty. And a lot of people will use this in abstract painting, and I can add some alcohol to that and get that metallic to even separate a little bit more. Now I could blow that out a little bit. And are you able to see that gold in there? It's really, really pretty. And I have some that's already diluted. I think this is diluted, yeah. So this is just a little bit of metallic mixed in with some alcohol. So let me put down a drop of pink, and I'll add that diluted gold right on top. So what happens here, you don't see it show up as much, but it just adds a little bit of shimmer. And it's going to be hard to see on camera, but it adds a little bit of that gold around the edges.
I don't know if anybody else in Kimberly's classes agree with me, but I find the metallics don't show up very well in photographs or on like a video, but in person they're gorgeous.
Yeah, that's true. They don't show up well. And sometimes in photographs, they almost look muddy, kind of brown. So it's hard to photograph them. And it's really hard to scan them too, because I've had some pieces that had some beautiful metallics, and when I tried to scan them, they just don't, you just can't get it to show up. But in person, they do look really, really pretty. So any other questions? I hope you'll give it a try.
Does anybody want to unmute? Does anybody want to unmute themselves and ask Kimberly questions?
How about preserving the material after you've done the painting?
I use this Krylon UV archival, and you would just use it according to the directions on the back, but I use at least 4 or 5 coats of this. And you really need to use this in a well ventilated area. If you've ever used these products before, you know how strong they are. So I usually spray a lot of my things at one time, and then I leave my workspace, and then come back. And it's just hard to stay in the room because it's really, really strong. But this will protect it against fading, and also set the ink so that it doesn't react with alcohol.
So the inks are not waterproof, is that right?
Well, they don't react with water, but they react with alcohol. So when we are using these products, it needs to be more of a water-based product than it is alcohol-based. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure I understood.
Well, we did the, some of these works on a tile, for instance, and after it dried, if you decided to wash the tile, it would wash the ink off, wouldn't it?
The water wouldn't really affect it so much as the alcohol would.
Okay.
But you do need to, once you seal it, it should be, you know, okay. I mean, it's still, if you had something really sharp, you could scrape it off. But if you ran some water over it, it would probably be fine. But it's going to be more reactivated by alcohol than it would water. And then some people who paint on tile actually resin on top of it, and use them as coasters. But you have to use a special resin, you know, to get that heat resistant type of resin. And I've even seen people use them as like a, you know, backsplash. But I don't know, like I've been real hesitant to do that. You know, like around, you know, in a kitchen or a bathroom or something. I don't know how those would hold up over time.
Where's the best place to buy your alcohol inks?
I get mine from a place called Joggles online, Joggles, joggles.com. They usually have the best prices, but you can also find them at, you know, Michael's and Hobby Lobby and, you know, your local craft stores. But Joggles actually has the best price.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kimberly, I'm curious to know about the application on encaustic.
Encaustic wax? Are you asking how I
Yes.
use encaustic wax? I use it with an iron. I use a mini iron.
With the alcohol inks.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
I'm sorry. So with the alcohol, let me try it again. So with the encaustic inks, you apply them with the iron onto the wax?
Okay, so when I said I use encaustic wax, that's a separate thing from the inks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I do encaustic wax painting and I do alcohol ink painting. I have mixed some. I have done some encaustic wax on top of an alcohol ink background. But the only issue with that is that with encaustic wax, you're melting wax, either with an iron or a blowtorch or something. And a lot of times these that we use for alcohol ink will melt because they're almost like plastic. So you have to be very careful when you're adding heat to this.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, even when you're, somebody mentioned using a hair dryer with the inks, that would be the only thing that you need to use on a low setting or it will work because it's, you know, again, almost like plastic. So if you're using heat with alcohol ink, you really should be using it on a tile, something that won't warp like this paper will, or either a low setting on your hair dryer.
Kimberly, you mentioned somebody that did landscapes on YouTube. Can you mention that name again, please?
Alexis Bonavita-Cola. So it's BONAVITA. COLA. Did I spell that right? Bonavita-Cola.
Again, Bono, B-O-N-A.
David, I just put the website in the chat. Carolyn looked up the website and I put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Kimberly's website is there too. And so everybody knows this is not a done deal. So Linda may reach across and smack me, but Linda is seriously thinking she's talked to Kimberly about possibly doing a class for us like we used to always do after our speakers when everybody would leave, but the speaker would stay and we would do a small class. So if you're interested, I've already gotten a couple names, Karen, Carolyn, me, and Linda. Kimberly would like to have at least 10 people. And then if we get that number of people, she and Linda will come up with maybe a date and time. It'll be virtual and we'll actually be working along with Kimberly instead of just watching her work. So let us know if you're interested in that. Right, Linda?
Yeah, I'd love to do that too. And I think it helped me along because when you're first trying out even the canned air, the airbrush, there are little things along the way that if I'm watching you, I can help you, tweak those things to make it easier. Because like you said, it doesn't, you know, it takes practice just like everything else, but there is a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to using the air to blow out the petals. So I think that's nice to be able to interact a little bit, and so I can see what you're doing and you can see what I'm doing.
Kimberly, what about framing pieces that are done on paper or plastic? Would you frame it like you do a watercolor? Or
I do. I frame my pieces behind UV glass also, because I want to add that extra protection. If I'm putting something in a gallery, or if I'm selling it, I always use UV glass in addition to the sprays that I'm using. So, but yeah, I'll mat it just like I would anything else, and the same way.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got anything?
These are beautiful. Thank you for doing this for us.
Oh, thank you. So this was the one on black, and I splattered some gold, and this one got a little crazy. I'll probably keep blowing that one a little bit, and I'll finish that center up. But that's kind of how that works. It's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun.
So Kimberly's really good at it. I'm very new at it, and this was one of my efforts.
Very
so
nice.
you guys,
that's great.
If I can do that, and see how supportive she is, no matter how bad it looks, she tells you it looks great and she gives you help. So if I can do this, we all can do it. So
now, how big is that one?
It's on a 5x7. Most everything I do is on a 5x7. And she didn't show you how to do little thistles because she ran out of time, but we've done thistles, we've done all kinds of stuff. So it's a lot of fun in the classes. So somebody else just asked, is there a recommendation on the airbrush gun?
Mine is a Master TC20. That model might be outdated now, but that's there's probably one that has replaced it, but it's a Master TC20. And here's what it looks like. So it's, if you can see my desktop there, it has a little area here where you can adjust the PSI setting. And it says it goes all the way up to 100, but it actually only performs well at probably about 60 or so, 60 PSI. And I work around 40, and some people work at a lower PSI. But this actually will save money over time, because this canned air around here costs almost $3 a can. And you can go through one or two of those sometimes in just a couple of paintings.
And everybody, don't forget that Jim Wilson has offered one up if anybody needs one, and he hasn't given it away yet. So Kimberly, do you prefer Ranger to Pinata or any other brand of inks?
I like Ranger just because of the colors. I have a lot of the Ranger colors. As far as the metallics, I like the Pinata metallics, and I like the Ranger alloys. They call them alloys. And there's some new inks out there now. T-Rex is a very small company. They have some really pretty colors. But yeah, I probably have more Ranger colors than anything else. And some people use the Copic refills, you know, the Copic pens that alcohol ink based pens. You can get the refills for those, and some people use those, and they have a lot of different colors.
So if nobody else has any questions, I did just get a message that says, Jim, thank you very much for offering the airbrush. Somebody has taken that offer up. Kimberly, you gotta love the red on black, which actually that is really cool. The black just really makes it show up, I think, more.
It does, yeah. It really does. It's beautiful.
So if nobody else has any questions, Linda, I think we may be at the end of our day. Carol and Linda, what do you guys think?
Bill Lum just posted on Facebook his sketch of Kimberly, so you should take a look. It looks really good.
What?
Yeah.
Share it. I'll share it for you, Kimberly. I'll go look at it and share it. Bill, will you share that for me?
Oh.
Oh, how cool. That's so cool. I like that.
That's really cool.
You're very talented. Wow.
Yeah. Action cam. Okay. All right.
So
I'm sorry.
Carolyn,
Somebody
are you
said, what is the
taking?
name of the? Somebody I think asked, what is the name of the white? And it's Snowcap.
White is
Snowcap.
right.
So everybody, Linda just put
Thanks
her
again,
email.
everybody. I really enjoyed it.
Linda put her email in the list. It's cobalt, COBALT .glass, GLASS @yahoo.com. I have the list of everybody who said something today, but if anybody else is interested in the class, make sure you get with Linda and she and Kimberly will get together.
Thank
So
you.
other than that, Linda, you want to take it?
Yes, a million thanks, Kimberly.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to trying it. I think that with all the people who are mixing their primary media and expanding and trying something new, this is something that will add to our toolbox. And it was great to see your paintings evolve. Thank you, Jackie, for helping to set this up.
You're welcome.
And everybody, no matter where you are, if you have a suggestion for a guest speaker, please let me know. And no, I don't know when we'll set up the class. Most likely daytime, because Kimberly is on Eastern time, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Kimberly.
you.
It was wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you. After I edit this,
See
I'll
you
be putting it up
soon.
on YouTube.
Okay.
Sounds
thanks.
good.
All right, get your artwork going for our juried show.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, everyone.